to take the edge off of you guys to help you soothe your nerves a little bit. We have organized this event, and this event is to like clear your doubts if you have any. And I welcome Mr. Maruti Konduri. I didn't butcher your name, sir.
No, no, it's okay.
Uh, Mr. Maruti, he's in IIT Bombay alumni and IIM Ahmedabad alumni, and he's also the co-founder of CrackU.
Yeah,
So when it comes to CAT exam, I don't think anyone is more qualified than Mr. Maruti over here, who can give you like tips and tricks and valuable insights to the exams. So let's start this event. I welcome you, sir, to the event, and
yeah.
yeah,
So
it's
since
all
it's still
yours,
just
sir.
like 2 days left, I just want to get a sense of how many of these guys are actually taking CAT. Are these people taking CAT this year or are they taking CAT next year so that I can give them more specific advice?
So yeah, there are some like students who are taking CAT this year, and there are like future aspirants also. Like some of
Okay.
them,
One of the things
some
that
of
people,
them,
yeah. Tell me, please go ahead.
yeah. So some of them are like taking the exam this Sunday, and some of them are planning to take the exam next year.
Okay.
So
Some of the people,
okay,
especially people who are planning to take it next year, if you have already applied for this year, haven't prepared, I would advise you to actually go to the center and take the examination because there are many people
right.
who have not prepared a lot. They've applied for the examination, and just before the examination, they feel
Uh-huh.
that okay, I haven't prepared well, so I don't want to attempt it. So if there is any one of you who has applied for the examination but doesn't want to attempt it and wants to attempt it next year, I would recommend you to definitely go and take the examination this year, even if you haven't prepared a lot, even if you prepared very little, even if you haven't prepared also, it makes sense for you to go and sit in the examination because you'll get a feel of what it takes and how the examination is, and that will benefit you next year. So that is one thing that I would advise you. The second thing is I'll give two advices. One, I'll address the people who are taking exam now, and one, I'll advise people who are taking examination next year. The people who are taking examination now, because the examination is just 2 3 days away, it's just like 2 days away, it is very difficult for you to really prepare a lot or improve yourself on a conceptual level, but you can definitely improve yourself on a mental level, on a psychological level. You should calm yourself down. Hey, hi. Yeah. Yeah. So I was saying that you should keep your calm. You should ensure that whatever is in your hands, you are still trying to do that. Essentially, there are certain things which are still in your hands. One of the things in your hands is ensuring that you sleep well or you try to sleep well on Saturday. Ensuring that you reach the examination on time. Ensuring that if you are especially from slot one, you can try to book a hotel nearby so that you can get that extra 1 hour of sleep. There are small things that you can do which will all add 1% more, and if a lot of things actually work out in your way, there will be a significant difference in the percentile. You will have a slightly better sleep, you will be a little better rested, you will have some better control over your nerves. So there are still small things that you can do to ensure that your percentile on Sunday will improve. That is one thing that you should tell yourself. The next thing that you should tell yourself is, irrespective of what happens on Sunday, whether you do very well or whether you don't do as well as you would have wanted, in both the situations, how you take the next step should be similar. Because I'm assuming that most of you are taking other OMETs also, other MBA examinations like XAT, IFT, TISNET. All of these examinations are going to come up after CAT. So it shouldn't happen that on the day CAT is over, you're feeling super exuberated, you're feeling that you have done very well, and you stop preparing. Or you should not feel super demotivated that I have not prepared, I have not done well. So it shouldn't happen that you are suddenly completely like switched off or demotivated. That shouldn't happen. Either ways, remember that after Sunday, probably for a day or two, you can rest, you can maybe feel happy, or maybe you can feel depressed. Any one of the things can happen. But after 2 3 days, you should again come back and start preparing. It shouldn't happen that you give up on your preparation just because you haven't done well in an examination, or you give up on your preparation because you have done very well in an examination. Both of these extremes are not good. This is more or less the advice that I have for people who are taking the examination this Sunday. If you have any questions, feel free to message in the comments, because if I see some comments, then I can address them in a more specific manner. Otherwise, I'll discuss the plan that should be followed for the students who are taking the examination next year. I'll just wait for a couple of minutes. If there are any questions from people who are taking the examination on Sunday, let me know. Otherwise, we can go ahead and address the people who are taking the examination next year.
I think most of the guys are taking exam this Sunday, and like
Okay.
most of our people in the audience, right? So yeah, we can
Another thing I
address
would tell
them.
you is that there are many people who would not be able to sleep well on Saturday. I think that is something that is fine, that is common. You shouldn't get worked up if you're not able to fall asleep on Saturday, just the day before the examination. But it doesn't mean that you get up and you start watching a movie. Even if you're not able to fall asleep, probably read a book by your bedside, but don't like do something which will strain your eyes. Don't watch something on your phone or on the TV. Just try to sleep. Even if you're not able to fall asleep, just close your eyes and just relax. Try to do some breathing exercises so that you're not stressed out.
All right, guys, show some support in the comment section. Like, show that you're present, you're listening. Let's be in. Let's show that you're an interactive audience. Right. If you guys have any doubts, comment now. Or should we wait? Or
Okay, I can talk about next year's cat also, but basically I want to know who is listening. I can again give explanations, but again, if I don't know who is listening, then it will be difficult for me to.
yeah, yeah,
Hi, sir.
Hey, hi, Adit. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. So I just wanted to know something regarding the DILR section. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm planning to take CAT this Sunday as well. So, how many
Okay.
sets should we try to solve? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what should be the essential number like which we should be targeting?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one question which I have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. With respect to DLR, again, there are two things. There are many people who are super worried about DLR, and with good reason. Because in verbal and in quant, the volatility is not so high. The variance will not be so high. Some people kind of know that, okay, I'm good at verbal. Some people know that, okay, I'm kind of good at quant. It won't happen that I will completely miss up quant. So there are people who know that. But in DILR, even if somebody is good at DILR, they are always worried that there might be a set or there might be a few sets where I'm not understanding at all, or I might get stuck in a set. So the important thing to ensure is that you should not get stuck in a set, at least at the start. In DILR, the most important thing is getting the first set correct. That will give a lot of confidence and that will ease a lot of pressure. For example, if you spend 10 minutes and you haven't cracked the set, you start getting nervous. You feel that, okay, I have wasted 10 minutes and I'm nowhere close to answering this set. What should I do now? Is a situation that many people face. And then the next 30 minutes are also completely wasted because they are just like nervous, stressed out and all. So getting that first set correct is very important. How do you get the first set correct? What I do and what I tell my students to do is, when you start the DLR section, ensure that you spend the first 2 minutes in going through all the 5 sets. I expect there to be 5 sets this time with say around 20 to 22 questions. So ensure that each set you are spending around say 20 seconds. 20 seconds on the first set, just get a hang of the theme. What is it about? What is the kind of set it is? Then go to the next one. Again, go through the set quickly. Try to get an understanding of what it is. Spend 20 into 5, that is 100 seconds, that is less than 2 minutes. But glance through all the 5 sets and then make a priority order of, okay, first I'm going to attempt the third set, then I'm going to attempt the second set, then I'm going to attempt the fourth set, or some way in which you identify the priority and then start attempting the sets in that priority. So within the first 2.5 minutes, even if it is wasted, you are much better planned. You know clearly that, okay, I think the third set is easy, so I'm going to start with it. Now, it might be easy, it might not be easy, but there's a good chance you're actually correct about your strengths. There are many people who are good at arrangements questions. There are many people who are good at Venn diagrams questions. At least you know your strengths, so you probably feel that, okay, this is a set I'll be able to get correct. Now, if you get it correct, then the next set will follow. You know, again, then I'm going to attempt the fourth set. But if for some reason you get stuck in this set, after the first 4 or 5 minutes, that is after the first 2.5 minutes you have spent in prioritizing, after the next 3 minutes or 4 minutes, if you feel that you're not making headway in this set, then ignore it and go to the next set in your order. This way, after the first 10 to 12 minutes, you will definitely get one set correct. Now, once you get that first set correct, the next things will follow easily. And in my opinion, if you get 2 sets correct, that is good. If you get 3 sets correct, you have done very well. This is what I would advise you to do. And one more thing with respect to DILR, this is dependent on how you are attempting your verbal section. Towards the end of verbal section, don't get stressed out. Okay, don't because there is no gap between verbal and DILR. So if possible, if for some reason you are able to get 30 seconds off in the last bit of verbal, take a breath, calm yourself down, and prepare yourself mentally for DILR. For example, you finished a RC. You don't have a lot of time to attempt an RC. There is just say 1 minute left. Then don't get nervous and try to start a new RC. Just think, imagine that, okay, this 1 minute I'm going to waste to calm myself down to focus on DLR. You see what I'm saying, right? If you're close to solving an RC, or if you have some questions you want to attempt, all that is fine. But for some reason, if you feel that there is 1 minute left and there are, say, an RC left or bigger things, which probably will take much more than 1 minute, then don't try to like haggle for that 1 minute. Use that 1 minute to calm yourself down. In an ideal situation, between sections, we should be getting a 5 minutes break so that we can calm ourselves down. But that is not being given. So ensure that you try to take that 1 minute in verbal and focus on DLR. Good question, Adit. If there is anybody else who wants to ask any questions, please do let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, I can ask you one question, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, sure.
So like most of the students who have like poor academic scores, as in like +2 scores, is around 60, around like average scores, right? So like, what advice would you give them? Like, is it possible for them at all to get into IIMs?
The thing is, without sugarcoating, it will be difficult for them, but it won't be impossible. I personally know people. I can actually give you a personalized example of somebody who had very poor academic scores. I knew that person very well. He worked for Krakow for a year, but he worked very hard. He's a very hardworking guy, a very focused guy. So, and he got into IIM Calcutta. So it is, and he nearly got into IIM Ahmedabad. So it is not as if it is impossible. But the thing is, you have to look at it in 2 ways. One is, it would have been great if your academic scores are good. It would have been terrific. But if that is not the case, then there is nothing you can do right now to change it. Now you have to agree that this is what has happened. Another way to look at it is, if you imagine that, okay, say IIM Ahmedabad has 10,000 seats. It would be great. If there are 10,000 seats, that would be great. Many people can actually study. But that is not the case. Now it has only around 300 seats. So if there are 300 seats, what can we do? We have to try to be in that 300. In a similar way, now imagine that instead of 300, there are say 200 seats or say 150 seats. So that is the situation for people with poorer ACADS. It is not as if they can't get in, but it will be more difficult for them to get in, but not impossible. So the student that I was talking about, he had 70 percentile in 10th and 12th. I think he had 80 in 10th, but he's from a Hindi medium background. And then after 10th, I think he shifted to English medium. So his 12th score was not very good. I think it was around 71. And in 10th, it was around 80. And in BTech, it fell even further because it was engineering and he could not prepare well. It was in his 60s. But this guy actually, he took CAT 2-3 times and he was always doing very well in quant. He was getting like 99.8 and 99.9 in quant. But in verbal, he was not clearing the cutoff. So then he joined us and we used to work with him and we used to advise him on a more personal level. We knew him, we knew his strengths, we knew his weaknesses. And after discussing for a few weeks, we felt that, okay, don't take complete mocks, just start taking sectionals. So every time he used to take only verbal sectionals and he used to slowly improve. Sometimes it used to fall, sometimes it used to do well. But at least that guy was like super focused. He was very, very focused. Basically, when I used to see him prepare, it used to be very inspiring for me because I used to be reminded of Arjun from Mahabharata because this guy was like super focused. When I used to talk to him, he used to tell me that, okay, sir, if I want to get into IIM Ahmedabad, I need my CAT percentile to be 99.96. If I have to get into IIM Calcutta, it should be 99.94. So he put all of that calculations in place. So he knew that, okay, if he gets this much, he'll get this shortlist. If he gets this much, he'll get that shortlist. Very, very clear about what he needs to do. and he was very focused. He took like some 40 full-length mocks and a lot of sectionals, and he got 99.98 in quant, 99.9 again in LRDI, and 96 in verbal. Overall, his percentile was 90.97. And then he got a shortlist from A. He didn't get a shortlist from B. He got from all the remaining ones. A, he got waitlisted after interview. He was waitlisted, I think, around 20, which didn't move. But C, he converted. So finally, he joined IIM Calcutta. So it doesn't mean that if your academic scores are poor, it will be definitely more difficult for you than somebody with a better academic scores, but not impossible. The way you have to look at it is somebody with very good academic scores would require 99.6. You would require 99.8. Now it is more difficult, but you have to reap what you sow. If you had studied better, then it would have been easier.
Yeah. So yeah, it all comes down to like as you said, it's not impossible. It's all about hard work. If you
Yeah.
put in, if you put in the work, you can get into an IIM,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
with the low academic scores, right?
Definitely. I know many people like that, but all of them had one clear attribute. All of them were super focused.
Right.
And in general, I like people who are very focused because focused people, I feel, actually change the world. And many people who are not focused, they just crib. But focused
Yes.
people change the world. So I have a lot of respect for them.
Right. So, like, other than that, like, as in, when you go for interviews, right, after writing CAT exams and all, like, what kind of profile would you suggest? Like,
One of the things, yeah, go ahead, complete it, then I'll.
yeah. So, like, as in, like, what is it necessary to have work experience when it comes to joining the IIMs, right? Or like, what exactly do they look into a profile, right? Or is
Okay.
it just the marks only?
The way to look at WorkX is two things. I am very pro WorkX. I always tell people to try to get WorkX for two reasons. One, it will make your task slightly easier. Like in an earlier question when we discussed academics also, one of the ways in which you can help yourself is by working for some time so that you get some marks for WorkX. So instead of needing 99.8, you would probably need 99.75, which is better for you. So that is one reason because of which you should definitely look for WorkX. It will make your percentile required to be slightly lesser. The second thing that you should do, the second thing as to why you should do WorkX is because when you join an MBA later, you will understand the classes better. For example, if there is a case study which is going about some company or some issue that a company is dealing with, which especially involves say HR, like how you interact with your colleagues, not just about the strategy that the company should use. You will immediately be able to relate it to something that you have experienced. You might have some office politics. You might have some inhibitions in talking to your boss. Your boss might not be giving you feedback regularly. There will be some issues, but you will understand that case better if you have WorkX. So that is the second reason why I would really recommend people to have WorkX before they join MBA.
Right.
Now, coming to the interviews, what is a professor looking at is very simple. A professor is looking for somebody who has stability. A professor wants somebody who is a mature person, who has stability in his or her thoughts, who is not going to be a like volatile guy. They don't want somebody who is a person they can't really trust, because they don't want a situation where 20 years later this guy or this girl is going to bring disrepute to the institute. That is something that they don't want. For example, I'll give you a simple example. So if a professor asks a student that, okay, what do you plan to, or what have you done recently that you felt very good about? Now, if somebody says, okay, I worked in a company for 6 months, I didn't like it, I wanted to travel the world, so I quit and I traveled the world. That is a very bad answer. That is a very bad answer because a professor doesn't like somebody who acts on impulses. Now, if a student has actually said, okay, I worked for 6 months to 8 months, I learned something, but then I also felt that I need something more, or I want to get into a job where I have more exposure. Or even if he wants to like backpack, if he gives the same answer in a more politically correct way, something like I'm looking for more real world experiences where I get to meet a lot of people from different countries. And so I wanted to I made a plan about going to a few like monasteries or going to a few ashrams and meeting a lot of people. Then at least this looks like this guy has put some thought into what he wants to do. So he knows what he wants to do, so he has taken this decision. So the same answer also, if you're expressing it such that you look like a more mature person, who doesn't act on impulses, that will be a better candidate. That is what a professor is looking for.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'll take two more questions and then I have to go at 4:30. So if there are any questions, please let me know. A couple of questions will be good.
Okay, guys.
So, hi, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's regarding the RC part, the reading
Sure.
comprehension, verbal ability part.
Sure.
So usually the combination which I go for is like focusing on two reading comprehensions and then going for 4 to 5 questions in verbal ability. But we can also like focus on three RCs and try to do as many as verbal ability questions in the remaining time. So like what kind of a thing do you prefer personally?
Okay. Personally, I am slightly better at RCs as compared to verbal questions. My accuracy, there is a big difference in my accuracy for RCs as compared to the accuracy in verbal. But in verbal, you have theta questions, which I think again are slightly easier because if you get some idea, you will be able to get the entire pattern out. Like if you are looking at para completion or para jumbles. But in general, I'm very poor at para summaries. I'm not able to do them quite well. So I try to get as many RCs correct as possible, and I try to get the theta questions correct in verbal part. Now, how I approach it is that when I first start the examination, my mind is quite fresh. So I don't need to read an RC 2, 3 times. When I read an RC once, I'm more or less able to understand the gist of it. But after the first RC, the second RC, I become slightly slower. My concentration levels also dip. But I try to get the second RC also done, and then I need a break from RCs because RCs are like more intense. If you lose the chain of thought in the middle, then you have to again go through the entire RC. But the first two RCs, I try to solve them first. Then I take a break, so to say, by answering some verbal questions, which are much more, in my opinion, slightly chiller. There is like much less weight on it. Even if you don't get a verbal question correct, you can go to the next one. But if you mess up an RC after wasting 5, 6 minutes, you are like again under pressure. So I try to get two RCs first. Then I take a break of around 4, 5 minutes. I try to get as many verbal questions correct as possible. Then I come back and try to answer the third RC, where my mind gets some rest and then it is again able to focus. This is what I do. Now you should know what you like to solve. Like I said, I prefer RCs as compared to verbal, and verbal basically I use as a break. But some people are actually good at verbal and not very good at RCs. So they should plan their strategy differently. My strategy is focusing on RCs. Verbal is just an added bonus.
I think Jay sir joined with us. Like, uh, sir, if you want to add something or if you could ask some questions as well.
Yeah, I'm looking for one last question. I have to leave at 4:30. So if anybody has one question, that will be great. Any question with respect to CAT preparation, interview, next year CAT, anything is fine.
So we have this file, right?
No, I don't want to get into the file now because it has like questions which many people can actually look at by looking at our website or our YouTube channel. They're basically questions which I liked from last year's CAT.
Right.
But if you are looking for last year's CAT solutions, we have uploaded all of them on our YouTube channel, so you can just check them out.
Right.
Okay, guys. Thanks for this session. Then it was a nice experience for me in talking to a lot of people. In case you have any doubts or if you want to reach us, you can always send a mail. I'll give you the mail ID: support@krakow.in.
Right.
Okay. If you have any doubts with respect to your preparation, you can always send a mail to it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir, for joining the event,
Yeah.
and thank you for your valuable insights.
Yeah, thank you.
It
Thanks a
was
lot.
great to have you on this event.
Yeah. Pleasure for me also. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So next, I think Nidun will be joining for the next. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so I think Jay sir will be joining. He'll be taking the session now. So,
All right. Thank you, Maruti Kunduri, for that wonderful insight. Thank you, Naman,
thank you, sir.
for those amazing questions. And thank you, Maruti, for your wonderful response and the valuable insights. Now, students, before we start the next session, this is me, Jayesh. Yeah, I'll give you a few strategies regarding the exam, which is very, very important aspect, which is primarily related to time management. See, an exam like CAT, it's not about scoring 100%. 100% is different, 100 percentile is different. So your aim is to catch hold of all those questions which are doable and not to waste time on those questions which actually kill your prospects by killing the time. Of course, there will be time wasting questions in any exam, and CAT has a pretty large percentage of such questions which are intended to kill your time. Okay? So, such questions actually test your EQ. What do you mean by EQ? Your emotional quotients. That means if you get stuck in a question and the first minute you don't get an answer, especially maths or reasoning, second minute you don't get, third minute you don't get the answer, then what you might think is, okay, now whatever happens, even if I don't clear CAT, I'm going to crack this one question before I go from here. That means that question has struck your ego. So once a question strikes your ego, you are in for trouble. So please make sure that you don't get into an ego clash with any question. Try for 1 minute, 2 minutes, you're reaching nowhere. That means there is something wrong. Either it's a time waster question, there is some inconsistency with the data given, or it's purposely given to confuse you. Don't get into that trap. Get to know that it's a time waster and immediately get out of that loop and move to the next question. Those who can manage this transition and prioritize questions, they are the ones who can attempt maximum questions and get maximum accuracy. All right. So this strategy of avoiding time waster questions. See, time waster questions are not there just in maths or reasoning. It could be there in English also. Difficult reading comprehension passages or parajumbles are examples of time wasting questions. So time wasting questions, please understand, you should not get stuck in those questions. Try to get out of it and try those questions which have possible answers and easy to solve. Okay. Now, having said about the strategy, how should you classify your time? How should you divide time based on the classification of questions? Let me explain it this way. Let's say you're doing attempting maths section, okay? And you have 35 questions. Now, in those 35 questions, you read the first question. You're not going to do that immediately. You first analyze the difficulty level of that question. For instance, you find that it's a topic. Now, this difficulty level, whether it's easy, medium, or difficult, depends on your practice, your areas of interest, your strengths and weaknesses. So, if you have practiced number system really well, you're very good with number system, you have done almost all types of questions, and the first question, let's say, is from number system, and it's a familiar question. Immediately classify, it's easy for you. Do it then and there, get the answer. Let's say you move to the second question, which is from percentages, and you have done that well, practiced it well, and you get it, you're sure that you will get it right. Do it then and there. That's an easy question for you. And you move to the third question. Let's say it's question from functions or algebra, which you're not very familiar with. You know the basics, but the question looks, pretty confusing. Don't waste your time. Classify it as medium or difficult based on your proficiency, and don't do it then and there. Instead, go to the next question. Now, let's say the fourth question is from geometry, and it looks like an easy question, doable question, or you feel that it might take time. Either mark it as easy or medium because you're not very sure you will get it. And move on. Now go to question that you will get minutes. So you stop, do it, get to the answer, and question seems to be very difficult, appears as a time waster. classify it as time waster and leave. Move on to the next question. Now, what am I doing here? I'm not wasting my time on any single question. I'm just getting the answers, moving on. In that way, you complete one complete round of the maths, all the maths questions. You'd have done at least 8 questions correct. Now, 8 questions correct is a huge score in CAT in a particular section. Now, if you're very sure that you've got 8 questions right, that is, you're on the right track. So it means once you get those 8 questions right, your confidence levels would go up. And then what you should do is, in the second round of maths, I said you completed one round of all the 35 questions, you classified the questions, you got an idea of the entire paper, and you're sure that you have not left any easy question unanswered. Now, in the second round, you should come back to those questions which you classified as medium or difficult or doable, and try those questions and get at least 6 or 7 questions right. Now, if you have got around 18 to 19 questions right, absolutely right, that is close to 100 percentile. So my point here is, if there are 35 questions, try to attempt at least 25, anything between 25 to 30 attempts with a right answer of around 18 will get you close to 100 percentile, definitely around 98 percentile. Did you all understand that strategy of doing 2 rounds of a section, covering all the questions twice? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Sugal, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this 2-round strategy is supposed to be one of the best when it comes to a safe side, so that you are very sure you have not left any easy question unanswered. Now, the third strategy, which is not a strategy per se, it's a method to make you more efficient and to make sure that you're not affected by fatigue. How can fatigue affect you? Usually, when you read a reading comprehension passage and do it, you can see that you get tired than you are tired while doing a math question. So the point here that I'm trying to make is, don't let fatigue affect you. And what's the best method? Take short breaks in between, maybe 1 minute. So if don't think that by taking a 1-minute break, you're wasting your time. In fact, actually, you're saving your time, because you'll become more efficient after that short break, because your endurance level would increase. Whereas if you keep on doing questions throughout the whole duration of the exam, you will get tired towards half time, and then your efficiency will come down, and gradually it decreases to below 50%. That should not happen. Hence, let's say the first 15 minutes, you tried a few questions, got it right, take a 1-minute break. Don't look into the questions. Don't think of CAT. Think of something else. Think of some good experiences in your life, or have a vision about your life. Think you have already cleared CAT and you're getting into IIM. So have a feel-good factor about the exam. Okay? And then jump back to the questions. Again, do for 15 minutes. Take a short break, 1 minute. Relax your joints. Look up, down. Relax your neck. Close your eyes. Sit quietly, take deep breath, and then again jump back. So like that, every 15 minutes you take a 1-minute break. So during the entire exam, maybe you are taking a break of around 7 minutes. That's okay. But in that 7-minute break, you're actually refreshing your brain to that extent, so that you can get around 20 to 30% more efficiency in the entire duration of the exam without fatigue affecting you. This is a scientifically proven method, and hence in any competitive exam, not just CAT, this 1-minute break for every 15 minutes of intense concentration is supposed to increase your efficiency by at least 20 to 30. Am I clear? So are you ready to take this break every 15 minutes? So next time when you take a mock, next time when you practice, and in that, practice this method and see how your scores are improving. Take 1-minute break for every 15 minutes of intense concentration. Is that clear, all of you? So these are the two important methods. One is you should do 2 rounds of every section so that you don't miss any easy questions and you improve your efficiency and get a maximum accuracy, and you're sure that you will clear the cutoff to reach around 98 percentile in every section. Point number 2, take a 1 minute break for every 15 minutes of concentration, thereby improving your efficiency. Okay. So these 2 tips can make wonders in your exam. All the best, guys. Now just take a quick break, 2 minutes, and come back for the next session. See you soon. All right? Don't go away. Just have a glass of water and get fresh and come back. Okay, Naman, over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the valuable insights and telling us the importance of breaks. Uh, yeah. So, guys, you should also take a 2 minutes break and we'll be right back with you. Next up, we have Nithun. He'll be taking the next session. So, guys, stay tuned. So, if you want a exercise or a question to solve, in the meantime, Nithun joins. While he joins, you can solve this question. So, guys, try to solve this question. And if you have any other doubts or anything you want to ask, you can ask right now. Guys, I have shared a link to a question paper. So I want you to solve the first 5 questions, and Nidun sir will be discussing those questions. So try to solve it and answer those questions. Nidun sir will join us shortly.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another session of Bell the Cat. Am I audible? Is my voice coming across clearly and audibly?
Hello, sir. Welcome. Welcome to the event.
Hi.
Yeah. So, little about Nidun sir. He's an IIM Kozhikode alumni, and he scored a 99.27% in CAT 2013. I think he's the right man to give you tips and tricks on CAT. Right. So, over to you, sir.
Right. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Naman, for that introduction. We are on the last leg to CAT, and JS Academy has prepared a comprehensive CAT QA question paper that we can attempt now to get, just solidify all the concepts that we have learned across our long preparation or our long road to CAT so far. So I hope the handout has been shared with you. Yes? QA? The handout on CAT QA? Let me know, guys, if you have it, or if you don't have it, I'll just put it in a Google Drive and send it to you. What's the status? Do
I
you
think
guys have it?
I've shared that link on in the comment section.
All right,
So-
all right, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, guys, try to be more responsive. Let us know that you're there. No one likes a sleepy audience.
We're on the last run up to CAT, guys. This should be when you are at your best, at your most enthusiastic, and willing to take up any challenges that are coming to you. So I would appreciate if you guys are more responsive so that we can learn from each other, right? I pick up a lot of great methods on solving questions from my students. So I'd appreciate if this is a more of an interactive class where I share methods and strategies with you. You in turn let me know if you have come up with faster methods or faster ways to solve the question than what is demonstrated in the class. So I believe most of the concepts have been covered. Let's take a stab at the first three questions. Let me give you a shorter time frame than I usually do. I'll give you 3 minutes. Attempt the first three questions. We will come back and discuss. All right, guys, what's the answer for the first question? Answer for the first question. You can either unmute and give me the answer, or you can just mention it in the comments. Before that, let me just share the digital whiteboard that we'll be using to solve the question. Please refer to the comment section. I've shared a Jamboard link with you, which will be what we're going to use as a platform to solve the questions. Right? All right, guys. Any answers for question number 1? Do you guys need more time, or what is the issue here? All right, let's take a stab at it. So the question is, how many 3-digit numbers? 3-digit numbers. I hope everybody has been able to access the Jamboard. Any technical issues, guys? Everybody's been able to access the Jamboard, right? All right. Okay. So, how many 3-digit numbers are there? Which product of the 3 numbers is greater than 2 but less than 7? So let the number be ABC. Then what do we have? A into B into C must be less than 7 or greater than 2. So the possibilities are A into B into C can be 3, can be 4, can be 5, can be 6. Correct? Agree? This is simple enough. What are the possible combinations? Three numerals, single digit numerals, must give a product of 3. Can be 1, 1, 3. It can be 3, 1 and 1. That is the only possibility. Now 3, 1 and 1, there are 3 places. There are 2 numerals. 1 repeats twice. So how many ways of arranging are there? It is 3 factorial by 2 factorial. 3 ways. Correct? Agree? Agree, guys? So let's look at 4. 4, what are the possibilities for 4? It can be 1, 1, 4 arranged in multiple ways. So that is 3 factorial by 2 factorial. There are 3 ways to arrange this. Correct? Then 2, 2, 1 are again 3 factorial by 2 factorial ways of doing this. So again 3 ways. How do I get 5? 1, 1, 5. Again 3 factorial by 2 factorial ways of doing this. 3 values. Correct? Agree? 6. 6, how many ways are there? It can be 1, 1, 6. There are 3 ways of doing this. It can be 2, 3, 1. This is 3 factorial ways. That is 6 ways. Any other way? Any other way? So this is 3, 3, 6, 9, 3, 11, 9, 3, 12, plus 3, 14, plus 6, 20. So how many ways are there? How many ways are there? So that's a total of 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 6. Sorry, 21. 21 ways of arranging this. So this is an application of the permutation and combination concepts. Is this clear? This is from the permutation and combination concepts. If m things are to be arranged where among them p things and q things repeat, then number of ways is equal to m factorial by p factorial into q factorial. So we had 1, 1 and 3. For example, how many 3-digit numbers can be formed? 1, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1 and 3, 1, 1. These are the 3-digit numbers that can be formed, right? This is same as writing. There are 3 values here. So 3 factorial. There are 2 values that repeat by 2 factorial, which is 3. So this is the application of the permutation and combination concept by which we arrive at the answer 21. Is this clear, guys? Any doubts? Any doubts, guys? Let me know if you have any doubts. I thought it is fairly straightforward.
Yes, sir.
Yes? All right. I see some people are joining now. So for the benefit, let me just paste the Jamboard link on the comment section. You can join in from question number 2. I hope you have the question paper with you. So I'll give you a couple more minutes. Attempt question 2. We'll come back and discuss. Okay, guys, answer for question number 2. Be quicker, guys. Be quicker. You need to pick up your pace. We are trying to solve it in the time frame that a real cat will put pressure on you. So we are trying to recreate the same time frame. So f of 5 plus x is equal to f of 5 minus x for every real x, and f of x is equal to 0 has 4 distinct real roots. What does this mean? F of 5 plus x is equal to f of 5 minus x. Very simply, what do you think this means? This means that if I were to plot the graph would be symmetrical. Graph would be symmetrical about 5, right? Why would the graph be symmetrical about 5? Let us say, for example, let's say x is equal to 0. This gives us f of 5 is equal to f of 5. Let's say x is equal to 1. F of 6 is equal to f of 4. Let's say x is equal to 2. F of 7 is equal to f of 3. Let's say x is equal to 3. F of 8 is equal to f of 2. X is equal to 4. F of 9 is equal to f of 1. So you're seeing, right? This is the inflection point. Above this, f of 6 is equal to f of 4, f of 7 is equal to f of 3, so on and so forth. So if I were to draw a graph, this is x, this is f of x. So if x is equal to 1, f of x, f of 1 is equal to f of 9. So f of 1 will be equal to f of 9, right? F of 2 is equal to f of 8. So f of 2 is equal to f of 8. The same value, like this, right? Like this, right? And this is f of 5. It is symmetrical about x is equal to 5, right? This half and this half are the same. So can I write the roots as f of 5 plus x is equal to f of 5 minus x? Can I say roots will take the form 5 plus k and 5 minus k? It will, right? Because it is going to be symmetrical about the value x is equal to 5. So this is one set of roots. One set of two roots. Another set I can say is 5 plus another constant c, 5 minus another constant c. This is another two roots. They're asking for the sum of the four roots. So these are the forms of the four roots. So their sum is nothing but 5 plus k plus 5 minus k plus 5 plus c plus 5 minus c. All the unknown values will cancel out. Answer is 20. Very simple. This is complicated, guys. This is, even though the question appears a little tricky, the solution is very simple. Did you understand? So whenever you're given function questions, the concept here is function questions think graphically, right? Just try to, if the function question is perplexing you, that is confusing you, just think graphically and just use substitute values. Use simple values, 0, 1, minus 1. Those kind of simple values, just substitute and see how the function behaves. Here, what have we done? We just took some small simple values and understood that the function behaves symmetrically about x is equal to 5. Since the function behaves symmetrically about x is equal to 5, I am able to assume a form for the roots, right? Form for the roots. The question is simply asking us sum of the four distinct roots. That's all that the question is asking us for. So we simply sum them up. All the unknown values will cancel off. You get the answer of 20. I hope this is clear, guys. Any doubts? All right. Again, couple of minutes. Attempt question 3. Any doubts in question 1 and 2? Now is the time to ask. Those who have understood 1 and 2, please move on to question 3. Give yourself a time frame of 2 minutes to solve the question. Just use the concepts that you have learned so far. Be confident. Apply them. You will arrive at the solution. I'm confident. All right. Couple of minutes. Question 3. Attempt it and we'll come back. All right, guys. Question 3 is probably the simplest question in this paper. Answers? Simple application of simple interest. It is as simple as the question, as a number of times simple is mentioned in the question. Answers, guys?
12.
12? Simple one?
Yeah.
Yeah? Just those who found it really simple, please move on to the next question. Just for the sake of everyone, I'll just explain this. Viru invested, so Viru invested 10,000. P, N, and R. Number of years, let it be N. Rate of interest is 5%. What did Joy do? Joy invested after 2 years. So he served 2 less years than Joy. So than Viru. So his term will be N minus 2. Amount is 8,000, but rate of interest is higher. How many years will the investments be equal? Principal plus interest. Now this is P plus SI, P plus SI. So we have to equate both principal as well as interest. So P1 plus SI1 is equal to P2 plus SI2. P1 is 10,000. Simple interest. What is the formula, guys? Simple interest is equal to P into N into R by 100. Simply substitute 10,000 plus 10,000 into N into 5 by 100 is equal to 8,000 plus 8,000 into N minus 2 into 10 by 100. Once you equate and solve, N will come to be 12. Yes. So it's after 12 years after Viru's investment that their balances plus interest becomes equal to what Joy is paying. Right? So N is equal to 12 years. Simple one. Fourth question. Take a couple of minutes. We'll come back and discuss. Be quicker, guys. Be quicker. Question 4 answer. Question 4. Answer, guys. Question 4. Come on. Just a straightforward application of time, speed, and distance. You guys need more time? Or you attempted and did not get? What's happening? What's happening, guys? You attempted and did not get it, or you're still attempting, you need more time? Okay, give you 1 minute more. All right, guys. Question 4. A train traveled at 1/3 of its usual speed. So let usual speed be s, usual time taken be t. Now, speed is equal to distance by time. Here, distance is constant, right? Right? There is a source, there is a destination, and we are always talking about traveling between the source and the destination, right? So distance is constant. If distance is constant, what happens? Speed and time are inversely proportional, right? Time are inversely proportional. We'll be using this concept. What does the question say? Train traveled at 1/3 of its usual speed. So this is case 1. Train traveled at 1/3 of its usual speed means speed is s by 3. As per this, since speed and time are inversely proportional, if speed reduces to 1/3, time taken must increase and it will become 3 times the usual time taken, right? Now 3 times the usual time taken, he reaches 30 minutes after the scheduled time. That means 3t minus t is this 30 minutes. That means 2t is equal to 20 minutes, 2t is equal to 30 minutes, t is equal to 15 minutes. So originally, this journey at normal speed used to take this person 15 minutes. So t we have found out. Now on the return journey, again distance is constant. Distance is constant. T is 15 minutes. And at the original journey, S distance is equal to speed into time. The distance can be represented as 15s, right? That is the distance that he covers. Now, usual speed he maintains for 5 minutes. So 5 minutes he maintains his usual speed means S is the same. 5 minutes. So 5. So 5s he covers. 5s he covers, right? Now he has to cover 10s. Now for this 10s, how much time does he have? Now here 5 minutes is exhausted, right? Another 4 minutes is exhausted in doing what? In doing stopping for the emergency. Now he must reach at the scheduled time. So the scheduled time is 15 minutes. Out of 15 minutes, he has covered 5s, but another 4 minutes is lost. So 9 minutes is lost. 15 minus 9, 6 minutes is left. In 6 minutes, he must cover the remaining 10s, right? The remaining 10s must be covered in 6 minutes, right? So the speed now, or the increase in speed now, the new speed S dash will be distance to be covered by time that the person has. Distance to be covered is 10s. Time that the person has is 6. So the new speed has to be 5 by 3 s. So s dash by s is 5 by 3. The percentage increase is nothing but s dash minus s by s, which is nothing but 5 by 3 minus 1, which is 2 by 3, which is 66.67%. Understood, guys? Simple matter of substitution. And the concept, when distance is constant, speed and time are inversely proportional. Therefore, remember, you are not asked what is the new incremental speed. You are asked what is the percentage increase in the speed so as to arrive at the destination at the same scheduled time. So you have to apply percentage increase concept, right? I hope this is understood. Any doubts here, guys? This is clear? Yes? Yes or no? Come on, guys, respond.
Yes.
I need to understand.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Move on. Give you a couple more minutes. Attempt question 5. Yes, question 5. Answers, guys. I hope you remember the logarithm class we took and the concepts that we learned then. If you do, this question is a cakewalk. Log base 4 of 5 is equal to log base 4y log base 6 root 5. Then what is the value of y? Any answers? Log 5 to the base 4. Now the logical thing is bring all values with the same base to one side. Correct? So log 4 base 4, there are two values, so I'll bring this side. Log 5 to the base 4 divided by log y to the base 4 is equal to log 6 to the base 5 raised to 1 by 2. Right? 5 root 2 is nothing but 5 raised to 1 by 2. Now, what is this value? Log base am by log base an. I can write this as nothing but what? Log m base n. I can take away the base completely and base it on the two values in the numerator and the denominator. This is a property. This is the property of logarithms. Let's say, for example, log 2 8 log 2 4. This value is obviously 3. This value is obviously 2. This is nothing but log 8 base 4, which is also 3 by 2, right? So that is the property that we'll apply here. So this reduces to log 5 base y is equal to log 6 base root 5, right? Let's call this equation 1. So what do we have from equation 1? Log 5 base y is equal to log 6 base root 5, right? Now let's assume this whole thing is equal to value k. Then from this half, what do we get? Root 5 is equal to 6 raised to k, right? Let's square both sides. Squaring both sides, we get 6k square is equal to 5, right? Now let's look at this. Log y 5 is equal to k, right? So y raised to k is 5. Y raised to k is 5. Substitute that here. 6k the whole square is equal to y raised to k the whole square. Correct? Agreed? 6k the whole square is equal to, sorry, not y raised to k the whole square, it is y raised to k. So 36 raised to k is equal to y raised to k gives y is equal to 36. Simple one. If you had known this property, this is a simple one. So this is where properties become important, guys. They can help reduce the most complex questions into very simple steps and get you the answer very quickly. I hope you have refreshed on all the properties of logarithms. Even though it's not a heavy duty emphasized section in CAT, there can be 1 or 2 questions that you can solve very quickly if you know the correct properties. So the benefit here is these questions can be solved in a very short period of time, in fraction of seconds, if you know the property, right? If you knew this property, you could have solved this very quickly, right? So that is where logarithms can give you high ROI, right? So that was question 5. Couple minutes. Question 6. Let's come back and discuss. All right, guys. Question number 6. Any answers? Question number 6.
Zero.
0. That's correct. Those who have arrived at the answer, please move on to the next question. Those who have queries, let's focus on the question. Now 2 raised to x plus 2 raised to minus x. Isn't this the same as writing 2 raised to x plus 1 by 2 raised to x? And we know from concept y plus 1 by y, from the concepts we learnt on maxima minima, y plus 1 by y minimum value is 2. The minimum value of y plus 1 by y or any version of y plus 1 by y is always going to be 2. So from the concept, we arrive at 2 raised to x plus 2 raised to minus x is bounded by a maximum, bounded by a minima of 2, right? So this is a minima concept. This is a minima concept. 2 raised to x plus 2 raised to minus x is, it's bounded by a minima of 2. Now we are given 2 raised to x plus 2 raised to minus x is equal to 2 minus x minus 2 the whole square. Now what about the RHS? This is the LHS. What about the RHS? The RHS is 2 minus x minus 2 the whole square. Now this value, does it have a maxima or a minima? Guys, does it have a maxima or a minima? What do you think? This is always positive. Always positive. And this value will be having a maxima or a minima? It will have a maxima. This is maxima when x minus 2 the whole square is lowest. And the lowest value of perfect square can take is 0. So that x is equal to 2, the maxima of RHS occurs. And x is equal to 2, the maximum value is 2. Max value is 2. So can I say 2 minus x minus 2 the whole square is less than or equal to 2? So this is greater than or equal to 2. LHS, RHS is less than or equal to 2. Only possibility is 2 raised to x plus 2 raised to minus x is equal to 2 minus x minus 2 the whole square is equal to 2. This is the only possibility. But what happens at x is equal to 2, which is where this reduces to 2? What happens here? What happens here? When x is equal to 0, what happens here? This will reduce to 2 raised to 0 plus 2 raised to minus of 0 is still 0. This is 2. What about RHS? RHS will be 2 minus 0 minus 2 is still 2 the whole square. This is 0. So 2 is not equal to 0. So this does not match. So LHS is not able to RHS. So no real value solutions. So 0 is the answer that we are looking for. Right? So the only possibilities are both sides are of the value 2. Right? And that yields no real solutions. So the answer is option B. Option B. And this is clear. Take a couple of minutes. Let's come to question 7. Yes, guys, answers for question 7. Question 7 answers. Please drop your answer in the comment or just unmute and give me your answer. These are all CAT questions, guys, so please take them seriously. Actual CAT questions. A straight road connects A and B. Car 1 travels from A to B and car 2 travels from B to A. Both leaving at the same time. They meet each other. They take 45 minutes and 20 minutes respectively to complete their journeys. So A takes 45 minutes, B takes 20 minutes to complete their journey. So that obviously indicates that B is faster. So let's consider an arbitrary point here. Consider an arbitrary point here where they meet. Now, once they meet, this distance dB is covered by car 1 in 45 minutes. This distance AD is covered by car 2 in 20 minutes. That is what we have, correct? This time is covered in, this distance is covered by car 1 in time t. This distance is also covered by car 2 in time t. The time taken here is same. This, the time taken by car 1 to cover AD is equal to time taken by, so time taken by car 1 to cover AD is equal to time taken by car 2 to cover DB. Correct? Correct? Now, car 1 travels at a speed of 60 kilometers per hour. 60 kilometers per hour. Distance is equal to speed into time. So AD, I can say, is speed into time, 60 kilometers per hour into t, 60t. AD is 60t. Right? Now, what is DB? DB is 45 minutes into speed into time. Time is 45 minutes, speed is 60 kilometers per hour. 45 minutes is nothing but 3 by 4 hours into 60 kilometers per hour. This is 15. This is 75 kilometers. So this is 75 kilometers that DB has to cover. Now this 75 kilometers is covered by car 2 in t seconds. So speed of car 2 is equal to, speed is equal to distance by time. Distance is 75 kilometers by t. 75 kilometers by t is the speed of car 2. What else? What other information do we have? This distance, which is, we calculated AD as 60t. 60t is covered by car 2 in 20 minutes. Right? So distance is equal to speed into time. So distance is nothing but 60t is equal to speed. Speed we know is from here 75 by t into time being 20 minutes is 1 by 20 by 60, which is 1 by 3 hours. Converting everything into hours. Right? Now this whole equation gives us speed of car 2 as 90 kilometers per hour. So just equate and you will arrive at the solution. All right. So that was question number 7. Answer is 90 kilometers per hour. Or we can use the concept here. Time taken is 45 minutes. Here it's 20 minutes. So you can equate the speeds. If the distances are same, speeds are inversely proportional to time covered. If time is same, this time and this time are same, Speed is equal to distance by time. If time is constant, speed is proportional to distance. You can use that concept as well. Either way, you will arrive at 90 kilometers. I hope the 7 questions discussed today were clear to you guys. We will reconnect in the next class to cover more concepts of quantitative ability. In the meanwhile, I urge you all to attempt that questions as possible. All the best for your final exam. Do well. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Okay, thank you, sir, for giving us tips on the CAT exam. Thank you, everyone, for joining the event. You guys have been great. Okay, so the team, Grace Academy team, wishes you all good luck for the exam. Can you turn your audio off, please, Vignesh Nair? Yeah, thank you. So, guys, yeah, Chase Academy team wishes you good luck, and I know you guys been working hard, and I know you're gonna like clear the exams. You're gonna do your best, and after writing the exams, you can join Chase Academy for pep up, GDPI, group discussion, personal interview sessions as well. So again, I want to thank you all you guys for joining the event and making this event special. So guys, okay, have a great day and good luck with your exams. Okay, thank you guys. Bye.